Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Shashank, and this is another episode of Trey Layton. Last time we explored Trey's journey from Harvard to Silicon Valley and how he's building his own ventures. Today, we're going deeper into who he is as a person. We're chatting about daily life, personal values, tools that we both use, and more. So stick around for that. This episode is going to be a little bit more free-flowing conversational with Trey. So get comfortable and let's dive right in. How are you going, Trey?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm excellent, man. Thank you. What have you been doing recently?
Let's see. Today's Tuesday, so pretty much the same old. I guess it's Wednesday over there for you. Section the new pup, getting some work done when I can, but things are good.
What are you obsessed with right now? Whether that's to do with your work or your personal life?
Yeah, I think I've kind of been interested in the topic for a while, probably because I studied economics as well in school, but I think like incentives in general and just aligning incentives and how important it is for whether it's a business outcome or political outcome or really whatever it is. I just think it's super interesting. And I've kind of just been taking a step back and trying to apply the idea of incentives and really how they explain outcomes that we see around us. Yeah, that's really what I've been primarily focused on. Does that make any sense?
I mean, I'm thinking Freakonomics. Is that sort of what you're?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I've read a couple of economics books in my time that are basically the same thing, just trying to explain how the most random objectives create the most incentives, I should say, create the most random results.
Yeah. Are you familiar with theory at all?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Yeah. So I hated it in school, but now I kind of wish I'd paid a little bit more attention.
So what have you been doing in this? Like, I mean, you say you're interested in right now. Have you just been researching it, or what have you been doing?
Primarily, I think for me, like we talked about last week, I studied political science, and so I've primarily been looking at it through the lens of like whether it's local politics or national politics, and really just kind of like seeing the disconnect between, I guess, like long-term optimization versus short-term political gain, and really just kind of thinking about what that means on a larger scale, and whether it's through political reform or just thought experiments. That's really where the primarily or the bulk of it has been focused.
Do you have any interesting findings so far?
This might give me a shot here, but I think democracy is a very, very flawed system. And I think the problem is that really the only superior solution is something that's a little more authoritarian, but that would require somehow holding this higher power or higher ranking person to some sort of standard, which I guess is like in a way, having those constraints on that person would be democracy, I guess. But I think just if you're looking at the current system that we have, perhaps it's because the two-party system, perhaps it's because the electoral college, really whatever it is, the incentives of the people long-term are just not aligned with that of the politicians. And so that's why we see all this excess spend, all this debt, and the federal deficit running up, because there's just no incentive for politicians to address those issues and plan for 5-10 years down the road when they're primarily focused on getting reelected in 2 to 4 years. So it's a little bleak, I would say, but yeah, that's really where I've been. I guess doing the most research.
Okay. No, interesting. No, there's the old saying, democracy is the worst system of government except for all of the other ones.
Exactly. that applies here. Yeah. That's what I spent way too much time saying. So
yeah, deeply flawed. But no one seems to have come up with a better one yet. But maybe, who knows? Maybe you're the one.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Cool, man. Well, I mean, obviously you've had a lot of change in the last few months, right? You've been doing a lot of different things. You've moved, you've finished university, you've moved to the Valley, you've worked several jobs, you've started your own ventures. How do you think the last few months have shaped your perspective on work and on your own personal goals?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, I've sort of had time to kind of sit back and think on what my long-term goal is when it comes to startups and building companies of my own. I think, up until this last 6 months or so, all I've been focused on was building a unicorn. It was, build the biggest, baddest thing, raise venture money, scale it to billions of dollars in IPO. But then at the same time, I think like as I've been doing that and have lacked a steady income, I've recognized how nice it would be to have some sort of steady cash flow that possibly would come from having like a boring software company or some like portfolio of companies, which I know that you're kind of more familiar and versed in that space, and so I'm excited to hear your thoughts in just a sec. But yeah, I guess I've kind of had to reconsider what my ultimate goal is between trying to go for it all versus just building enough to sustain what makes me happy.
Yeah, okay, that's usually my preference is cash flow companies. Obviously, scaling and building unicorns is cool.
Yeah.
But getting cash flow straight away, getting products straight away out to customers, you can use that to grow. I mean, in many ways, the VCs are only interesting to me, I think, if they add value, right? So there are certain accelerators, like obviously you mentioned YC to me before, that actually supposedly, from what I've heard, add quite a lot of value. You know, they teach you a lot. They give you a lot of connections, contacts in the industry that you can eventually sell to and work with. And that I think is really powerful. But anything short, I think money for the sake of money for VCs is, for me personally, I think pointless. I think if you're building a good product, you know how to connect with customers, you can do that yourself.
Yeah, I've actually been doing quite a bit of thinking on the role of VCs in sort of the startup industry, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on, do you think that really VCs as they stand right now, their current business model, do they have a future as like software costs come down, it becomes easier and easier to build a company, founders need less money, there are all these alternate forms of financing, whether it's crowdfunding or crypto or really all these other options. It just seems like there's, going back to incentives, there's a misalignment between what founders want and need versus what VCs need to really make their LPs happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think more so than ever, it's easier to build a product and a software and a business than it ever has been before, right? Because everyone has so many questions and they need expertise, but now we have expertise at the touch of our fingers, right? And we need much less money, as you said, to start startups. So I think VCs are going to shrink. I think there's going to be far fewer VCs moving forward, and the value add will be similar to what I said before, which is just how much can they teach you, how much can they connect you with other people, how much can they build your network. And that way, those are things that you can't necessarily do with the help of AI or any of the recent tools. You know, to an extent, you still need people to work with. You still need people to sell to, and you need people to teach you things. And that is the only VC that will survive.
Yeah, that makes sense. And from the founder's perspective, do you think that getting that connection, getting the benefits that come with adding that specific investor are going to warrant them raising more money, giving away more of the company? Let's say they only need $1 million, they go and raise $5 million because the VC needs 20% ownership or something like that. Do you think that from the founder perspective, that control or loss of control is worth it for those benefits?
See, again, it depends on the reputation of the VC company, right? If it's a really hands-on VC company that might kind of come in and try to change what you're doing, then I think that's a recipe for disaster, right? Because in that case, no one's happy, right? The VCs try to change what you're doing, so they say you're doing something wrong. They're not happy. You're not able to do what you want, and you have your own plan, your own vision for the company. So you're not happy. If you're not happy, you can't build a good business, right? Yeah. If you're not satisfied with what you're doing, there's absolutely no way you're going to be motivated enough to get up in the morning and hack around all day. It's just not going to happen. So I think it has to be, if it's a really good VC who really just wants to help, but they say, listen, in the modern climate, we need 20%, otherwise there's just no point. Like we're not going to make any money, no value. But we're going to let you do your thing, and we're going to give you all the advice, all the help, all the connections that you need along the way. Then I think that's potentially a better sales pitch.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
What about tech? So let's talk about, obviously tech is going through huge changes. There's hugely innovative tech today, you know, with AI and with all sorts of technology. Do you have sort of any opinions on AI and the future of AI, including how it affects privacy, how it's going to impact society, whether positively or negatively?
Yeah, I do. I think short term, I am concerned about the environmental impact of AI. Kind of have the same concerns with crypto and some of these other technologies that just use so much energy and so much power. And we just, in our effort to continue to beat each other in developing these systems and building these tools, we're just putting more and more strain on our resources there. Long term, I think there's going to be a pretty big economic impact, really socioeconomic impact, where if it is true that AI can do all these things that we think it's going to be able to do, and which frankly it's moving towards being able to do it, it would put a lot of people out of work. I think that we're going to have a pretty big problem if we have, 20% of people, and that's kind of on the low end really of people out of work because their jobs were automated or they no longer are needed because the company was able to cut costs enough because they had all these AI systems in place. And I think that we're just not really ready from having that societal or backdrop or net really to catch these people and to support them. Not sure whether that's universal basic income, like Andrew Yang has talked about, or finding some federal job that is frankly not necessary, but just kind of put people to work. I think that like we've seen what happens when people are just not doing anything. They get bored, and that's I think part of the reason we have all these issues like loneliness and social media obsession and things like that. I just think having too much time on your hands like that and just really no meaning or purpose can be a very bad thing. And I think that as we continue to develop AI and other technologies, really, we need to seriously consider the ramifications on people that are not involved in the wave.
So I think historically speaking, I always find it interesting. I try to think about the comparison of cars. There was a whole industry of horses, right? Horse breeders, horse rearers, leather workers, metal workers for horseshoes, blacksmiths, all sorts of people who basically overnight went out of business when the Ford Model T was introduced. So now, obviously, listen, people need to be looked after, but what we find is they very quickly can transition to new jobs, and the introduction of a new industry creates a lot of new jobs, right? The introduction of the car had whole manufacturing and mechanics and everything came in, and there was for every job that was lost, there was a job that was created.
Right.
Do you think that this is an exception to that rule? Do you think AI is not going to create as many jobs as it takes?
I think it's too early to say. I definitely do think that a lot of jobs are being kind of reworked rather than replaced, where you have people hiring all these AI engineers or workers, manual workers for the warehouse and things like that. I think what really separates this from some of those past innovations and disturbances is the fact that it's targeting a different group of society. I think in some of these innovations of the past, they've been really targeted towards replacing manual laborious activities like horses or railroads, things like that. Whereas this is the first time really where it feels like it's a direct competition to white collar work, where it's knowledge workers, it's college educated people, it's people that feel very secure and have always felt secure because they knew that if they went to college, got a good job, they'd be set for life. And this is the first time where in many cases those people are being made obsolete. And so I think it is going to be a transition, and we're seeing it in the education system where more kids are being taught how to use AI, more degrees in AI, more engineers in AI. And a lot of these people will probably be able to find roles in this new AI economy, but I'm not sure. I do think that with how efficient it is, it might end up cutting more jobs than it ends up creating. But I do think there will be an element of what you're talking about there.
Okay, and obviously you mentioned the universal basic income. What do you feel about that? I mean, obviously it could be necessary if there's actually just too few jobs and too many people. But obviously then it creates sort of people sitting at home doing nothing, and as you mentioned, then they get bored and who knows what they do.
Yeah. No, I've historically not been the biggest proponent of UBI. I think I kind of came around a little bit over the last few years, largely because of concerns related to AI replacement. Well, I actually recently saw a study that was kind of looking at the effects of UBI, and pretty much what I found was that there's no impact whatsoever on getting people by. Like, they were still spending all the money even if they didn't have it, and really that did make me question some things, I think, of how effective this could be as a solution to the problem. Still think it's too early to say for sure, but I do think it's kind of a sign that other people see this as a problem too, and we're trying to get ahead of it and make sure that we are aware of some of the consequences of what we're doing.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of jobs will be replaced by AI to be certain, and then perhaps we need an increase in more personal, interpersonal jobs. Perhaps it's an opportunity to get more, teachers and nurses in. People who can look after people, and where you kind of need a person. Like you can't really like AI is gonna build great stuff for education and great stuff for healthcare, but you can't really replace teachers and nurses. You can't replace the influence of a person on another person, right? So I'm hoping that maybe it's an opportunity to have more people in those sorts of professions, as we have more money in general to fund those professions as well, using the extra money that we get from having more productivity with AI.
Yeah, cool. That makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, let's talk about your practical life. What's your morning routine? I mean, you mentioned you're big into fitness in the last episode. So tell us a bit about that. What do you 5 a.m. person? Do you prefer late nights? What is it?
Yeah, I'm definitely a morning person. Actually, it is my alarm set at 5 a.m. every day, except on weekends. I tell myself to sleep till 6, which in the past I've never had a real problem with. I like to get up early. I enjoy kind of that quiet time of it's dark outside. I'm the only one up, and I just feel like that's when I operate best. Make some coffee, just kind of sit there and lock in. I actually like to get a deep work session in before I work out in the morning, because I do think that kind of that first 2 hours or so of being awake is where I'm most productive and efficient. Yep. So really try to leverage that and squeeze the most that I can out of that before I go to the gym. I will say having a puppy has kind of thrown a little bit of a wrench in that, and that I now have to take him out and feed him and play with him a little bit, and it's still, we're in an adjustment period, but I do think that for me personally, being a morning person is where I get the most done, I would say. And so you wake up, you do a deep work session, you go to the gym, and then once come back, eat more work, or? Yeah, exactly that. And that's pretty much my routine for the rest of the day. I try to get my steps in still. So I'll usually, like, with 5-10 minutes left in the hour, I'll just kind of walk around my apartment, drive everyone crazy as I'm pacing around. But I also do use that time though, where I am kind of walking around. I like to put my phone down and honestly just kind of zone out a little bit. Sometimes just need that mental break, even if it's just for a couple minutes. But honestly, some of my best ideas, I think, have come from just literally pacing around my apartment and like kind of taking a break and just thinking of something that I was sort of too locked in and too close to see from before. But you're a night person, right? No, I actually am a morning person, but I much less so than you. I operate much better in the morning. But for whatever reason, I've set my routine quite poorly for me. I think it's because everyone I know and associate with generally tracks later at night. I mean, it ends up kind of being a little bit detrimental to my life because I wake up a little later, and that means that I feel fewer productive hours of my day. So I mean, when I'm really grinding, if I need to get something done urgently, then I'll set my alarm for 4:45. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. I'll work until midday, and that's kind of when I'll go crazy, get a lot done. But in my normal life, I'm probably waking up more like 8:30, and then sort of relaxing and getting stuff done until, again, 2-3 p.m. where I get a little bit less productive, but it's still good. Yeah. So I mean, obviously you're a self-directed entrepreneur, right? Like you build your own things. There's no one telling you what to do in the morning. There's no one saying you have to do this today, this tomorrow. So how do you manage that? How do you balance your personal life, and how do you decide when you're going to work, how much you're going to work, what you're going to work on? Not well, I would say. Unfortunately, I do think it's an area where I can get better. And that's been kind of honestly how I've just always been. I hate sitting still, and so if there's like any kind of still quiet moments, I just feel like not even that I like need to. I have like kind of this condition that I need to be working, but like I just want to just have this drive. I'm constantly just wanting to be working on things, wanting to be doing things, and so I will say that I've been trying to do better, and being active and being really dedicated to my fitness routine, scheduling more time with loved ones and with friends, and really kind of myself to check out once in a while. And really just being present when I'm with them. I know that like, when I'm working, I want to work hard. And when I'm not, I need to do a better job of really cutting it off, because when I do, and I'm successful at cutting it off and getting enough sleep and really being able to maintain that balance, I do notice recognize a pretty noticeable difference in my work quality and in output. So I would not be the best person to take advice from on that, but that's a commitment to myself. I'll try to be better. Do you have any advice for me there?
I mean, it's tough. I feel like I've been in some capacity doing this for almost 5 years, right? Where I'm trying to direct myself, and the first couple of years, I'll be honest, were really, really bad. Sort of maybe even worse than what you're describing. Sort of having huge periods of time where I was just kind of completely distracted and doing absolutely nothing productive. For me, it's the biggest difference is when I go through waves, right? Sometimes I'm hyper focused, absolutely just I kind of, again, what you were saying, I just have a drive. I want to do things. I can't stop doing things. I love doing things. But then sometimes it goes away and I suddenly just feel lazy. I kind of want to lie down, kind of want to do nothing. Yeah. And the biggest thing for me is not letting those lazy periods last more than a couple of days, right? It's fine to have a couple of days here and there, but you don't want that to stretch into weeks and months, right? Yeah. So what I need to do is just a huge change of pace. So I get up and I leave, right? I go travel somewhere. I go spend the weekend or even a week at my sister's house or a friend's house or something. Just a change of pace where I'm sort of forced to sit with someone, and if they're working, I'll be working, and just a change of scenery for me always heals me. So I'll come back in a couple of days or a week, and I'll usually have a new mindset. I'll sit down and focus again for another period of time.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good point. I think even myself, or really everyone, I think there's we're not machines, we're humans, and so we do kind of go through those ebbs and flows of when we're motivated, when we want to be working, and when it sort of wears off. And it's really just kind of like learning how to work around our natural instincts there.
Yeah,
I think that's really good advice. Actually, I'll try to do better there.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what made the biggest difference for me. But I think for everyone, it's kind of each to their own on this one, right? You know how you way better than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Do you have any sort of favorite software that have helped you either be productive or be better organized or communicate better, be more creative, anything nowadays?
Yeah. So I'll give a very Silicon Valley tech bro answer and say Superhuman for emails. That's been a game changer. I used to make fun of those people a lot, and now I'm one of those people, and so I'm not going to make fun of them anymore. But I think that's been really helpful for me. I think I've always had a problem with like following up with people or getting basic information like did they open my email and things like that. I think it's been really helpful there. And also just like organization purposes, being able to quickly create a snippet where I can constantly reuse this template or just really things like that. I think that Superhuman's been pretty helpful for me. Are you on that wave, by the way?
No, I'm actually not familiar.
Okay, well, I recommend checking it out.
Okay.
It's pretty much like, I want to say like Notion for your email in a way, and just like kind of being like a all around productivity, just like nice user experience for your email. I'd say that's kind of what I would describe it as, but I'm sure that their sales pitch is much better than what I just gave you.
Sure.
From them. But Notion's been Superhuman's been a good one. I think earlier you had to kick out my Fathom note taker. I think that one's been another one that I really enjoy. It's pretty much it joins meetings, whether it's Google Meet or Zoom or whatever else, and one records it, but two does like a whole AI transcript and summary, and gives like key takeaways, action items, things like that. And for me, like, I don't know about you, but my memory is terrible. Like we'll be talking about something 5 minutes after the call, completely gone. Like I don't have any idea what I said. And so
I'm usually physically writing it down in a notebook or something, but that's probably better.
I mean, for me, I just want to be locked in on the conversation, know to be completely focused on that person, on the conversation we're talking about, and then kind of outsource the note collection process has been pretty cool. And the last one, I'm going to go with Screen Studio. I think for post once, I was doing a lot of product update demos and videos, and I was always wondering like where these people were getting these cool tools, and I'd use Loom, and I was like, okay, okay, but I was seeing people do these like super fancy zoom ins and cuts and like typing animations and all sorts of stuff like that. And finally found out what it was they're using, Screen Studio. And so I'm going to give a shout out to those guys because it's a super, super cool product if you're just doing basic video editing stuff.
I love that you said that because I was actually going to ask you. I saw one of your demos obviously recently, and I saw you do the zoom in. I was like, that's awesome. Like, how has he done that? Okay, cool. Screen Studio. All right, that's a good one.
Yeah. How about you? I'm always looking for good tools myself. So,
I mean, the big one recently for me has just been Cursor. I can't get enough of it. I think it's really, really cool. Obviously, what everyone sort of does when they first begin programming and trying to be productive is they copy and paste. They'll go into ChatGPT, they'll go into Claude, whatever it is, and they'll copy the code across, and then they'll sometimes get some of the code and they'll paste it into Claude and say, I have this code now. What do I do with it? And then Claude will get a code. You'll copy that. You'll paste it back. You're basically cutting out the middleman. I mean, the simplest thing you could do with Cursor is cut out the middleman. Suddenly, you're not doing all this crazy copy pasting back and forth. You could just provide the context with 2 clicks. Bang, tell me what you want. Okay, cool. Apply, 1 click. Right, done. But it even gets more intense than that. I mean, especially when you're spinning up a product in the beginning and you've got a base and you're trying to develop it, it can one-shot whole features with just a prompt. So you can say, go into its composer feature and just say, I want to build this particular feature. Maybe it's auth, maybe it's what do you call it? Pricing, how you get money, payment systems. And you explain it what you want to use Stripe, here's your Stripe ID, whatever. It'll one-shot the entire payment system a lot of the time.
That's awesome.
How
does it look from like a UX, UI standpoint?
So it uses, you can choose the model it uses behind the scenes, and it looks traditionally like those models look. So obviously ChatGPT has its look, Claude kind of has its look. Right. So it just looks like those, to be honest. But you can obviously adjust that, and you can take specific UI elements, tell it to use Shadcn, tell it to use Tailwind, and it'll look a bit different. Yeah.
Cool. No, because I think like being able to just build an MVP or prototype super quickly has never been easier, especially for a non-technical person. I'm just kind of thinking about like using Cursor for the actual functionality, the back end, everything of the website. And then using like one of those tools like V0 from Vercel for the UX, which I've been obsessed with too. Forgot to mention that one, but I'm not a designer, so kind of outsourcing that to AI. The one that actually is trained on all these examples of good software. You could seems like minutes. Like you could literally spin up a site in minutes. It seems with the combination there.
Yeah, I mean that's actually my stack at the moment. If I'm trying to spin up a new website, I will start with V0. I'll shoot it somewhere between 5 to 10 prompts in V0. Then I'll spin that out to Cursor, and I'll run another 5 to 10 prompts on Cursor, and I'll usually have, with a few edits, something pretty good.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
100%.
And that's really awesome. So outside of tech, do you have any life hacks? I mean, a special, maybe you drink something in the morning, you have a unique journaling technique, maybe something to keep you mindful, meditation or something, anything you do regularly.
Yeah, I think I've honestly tried just about every trick there is, from reading business books and productivity books and things like that, and just trying to get takeaways from there.
Yep.
I think what works for me is one, I love coffee. Not even like the caffeine aspect, but yes, it's nice to drink a couple cups and get the jitters and really kind of lock in that way. But the actual art behind it, the process of growing the beans, of sourcing them, of washing them, the different types of beans, regions, the distinct flavors, varieties, things like that. Like I've been kind of going down the rabbit hole lately of coffee. And so I think kind of it's been a nice little outlet for me. Be making my morning cup of coffee, seeing where the beans are coming from, things like that. I actually started a coffee journal. So I can kind of like make my own notes on each blend that I try. So that's sort of my, one of the first things I do each morning. And I think it kind of like sets the tone for the day. It kind of makes me lock in and feel sort of grounded. Then I think the other thing is I'm a big fan of the Sunday weekly planner. I think just kind of like taking a chunk out of the day, whether it's 30 minutes or so, and sort of looking at the week, say, these are the things that have to be done. And then around that, really make your schedule around what you find valuable. I want to say I actually got that from the 7 Habits. Is it the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People?
That sounds right.
Okay. It's
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
some combination of a number and some adjective to describe
Yeah.
it. But he talked a lot about that and just kind of making that when you are creating that schedule, you're being very efficient about, okay, what are my priorities? What's urgent and what actually matters to me and has the most impact? And just making sure that you're designing your schedule around that. And like you said, we kind of have a lot more freedom in how we're spending our time and being able to really ensure that what we're spending our time on is what matters most to us, what has the most impact, what's the most effective use of our time at each point. I think it's been really helpful in really visualizing and seeing how much time before I was spending on stuff that frankly was a waste of time. It wasn't moving me forward in any way, personal, professional, whatever else. And so I think that's been another one that's been a pretty big game changer for me.
Cool. So what about reading, watching, listening? Do you consume any content, whether it's for value or just for fun?
Yeah. I honestly like to just kind of zone out. But tech in business whenever I'm trying to consume media of any sort. So I love college football, American football, and so listen to a series, multiple podcasts. Honestly, like every day, I have like my 3 or 4 that I go to all the time. On TV, kind of the same thing. I like to watch stuff that's about as far from tech as I possibly can. Because even if I see something that's like a little bit too close to it, it kind of makes me think about work and then sort of start stressing out about it and wanting to be working on something else. And so I've just kind of found that I have to find whatever I can as far away as possible. Like I mentioned, or didn't mention this, but I'm currently reading a book on the history of Scotch whiskey. It's been another interest of mine, I would say.
Cool.
So,
Okay, you're a whiskey guy.
I am. Yeah, I think that's the Texan in me.
Cool, man. What do you learn anything interesting? Is that Scotch your favorite whiskey?
It's not, honestly. It was my grandfather's actually, but he had dozens and dozens of bottles around the house and always sipping after dinner, and so I've been blown away by how many different things are they going to making the perfect barrel, and it's been pretty fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, cool. I've recently started drinking some Japanese whiskey, and I'm super into it. So I don't know if you've tried it before, but
I've not. Yeah, I'll
give it a shot.
Yeah, you a fan of bourbon at all? Because I know that's what I grew up on.
I've drank some bourbon. It's never been quite my favorite, but I don't know if I've ever drank actual good bourbon. So.
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it comes and goes.
How about you? What are you watching these days?
What am I watching? So I'm reading a fair bit. I'm reading a book called Shantaram, which is about an Australian prisoner who escaped from prison and ran away to India and basically did a bunch of like smuggling and things in India.
Is it a true story?
Oh, it's. I mean, he wrote it himself, so I assume he's taken some liberties, made himself look a little cooler than he probably is. But it's supposedly a true story. He's like, no, I definitely fought those 10 guys like single-handedly, 100%. Yeah, but that's what I'm reading at the moment. I mean, I like to read nonfiction too, but I like to space it out a little. I think too much. I love reading, and I think reading too much nonfiction strips my joy of reading. So I like to have a few fiction books for every nonfiction book that I read.
Cool, man. What about podcasts? What are some of your favorite podcasts?
Some of my favorite podcasts. I've been listening to Layton Space recently for some cool AI stuff. They have like some good perspectives, updates as well on new AI tech. It's quite interesting because it's all deeply technical, and I spend a pretty limited amount of time in the deeply technical side of AI. But I like to know what's going on there, just because it will eventually spill out into obviously what we do more commonly, which is deal with APIs and things and integrations.
Yeah, cool.
What else have I been listening to? My First Million's a fun one. I love the Tim Ferriss show. That's always really, really good fun. I quite like podcasts. What about you?
I am a pretty big fan. I never honestly thought I would be on one myself, but I've always been a fan. I think for me personally, I kind of struggle to sit down and watch stuff at times and just kind of like watch it and enjoy it. So I think podcasts for me are the perfect format for being able to do things, like whether it's, I'm walking somewhere, or I'm at the gym, or I'm, doing laundry, really whatever it is, and just kind of having my AirPods in, and having someone tell me about why Alabama should have made the playoffs. Is something I enjoy. It works.
Yeah, right. So you like NFL podcasts as well?
Not as much, honestly. I kind of like, I like to follow these kids. When I talk about it, it sounds deranged. Like, we're literally following kids that are like 15, 16, 17, high school recruits, getting recruited to go to these schools. You watch them for a few years, they're 21, 22, get drafted, go to the NFL, and that's kind of like, bam, they're dead to me. I don't care anymore. But it's a little concerning, I would say, how many high schools I could like name for kids that are probably 16, 17, but they go to so-and-so school, which I'm like, that's probably a security threat. But
yeah, right. Yeah, okay, because they have millions of listeners listening to this,
exactly,
schools down the road. Yeah, okay. Let's do a fun one, Trey. If you had unlimited resources and time, what problem in the world would you like to solve?
Oof. I am terrified of bugs. And so I heard that we got to a point where bed bugs are about to go extinct. And somehow, some way, they had this massive resurgence where like 20% of homes in the United States in a given year experience bed bugs. And that's terrifying to me, because there's like pretty much no way to get rid of them. They're super annoying. Like they bite, they're itchy, like just nasty, scary stuff. And I just don't think that they serve any purpose. I think if I had a magic wand right now, I snap my fingers and bed bugs.
Get rid of them. Fair enough. That's a fun one. Unlimited resources of time. How would you use those resources, do you think?
I would get every smart mind to just say, hey, get down the science. We're in the lab, we're doing experiments, we're coming up with various concoctions and formulas that are dangerous to them and not to us, and how much they evolve and adapt. There's just no way to overcome them. And so really I would just go full blown, anti-bed bug dictatorship. We'd find a way. I'm confident.
Okay, cool, man.
Yeah. How about you? You probably have a better answer than bed bugs.
I mean, there's just too many to tackle. Unlimited resources at a time. I've always wanted to tackle something to do with poverty. So obviously that's a ridiculously large scope. But I really like what some people have been doing in fields like microloans and things in finance, where instead of, obviously charities, great, fantastic, right? But the issue with charity is if you're just giving someone something,
right,
then there's no way for them to continue getting it, right? It's give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish, right? If you give someone a loan, then they can go in and they can buy a goat in a third world country, and they can use that goat to produce resources, and then they can actually make plenty back to pay back that loan. And that's much more sustainable than charity, because it's also a business, right? How much can you realistically make from a charity? It makes a few $1 billion a year, not close to tackle the problem. But you tell people suddenly, well, yes, it's a charitable donation, but you also get a 10% return back. There's no reason why that couldn't be trillions of dollars, right? Everyone in the world would be, hell yeah, listen, we're helping people and we're getting money back. And then suddenly you can build this whole system that can actually be really, really useful for people to build businesses of their own without the resources to do so. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that I don't know. There's a lot of questions I have to answer. But I think something in a field like that is what I really want to do.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. I like that.
So cool, man. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I learned a lot about you. Hope you learned a lot about me. Maybe too much about me, but
it's a little bit too much. Yeah. A little worried now.
A little oversharing. Yeah.
Exactly. No, man. You want to drop off your socials again?
Cool. Yeah. So find me on LinkedIn. Trey Layton, TreyLayton. We'll currently say founder at Post Once. Again, haven't updated that, but pretty active there. Even more active on Twitter though. Trey Layton, all one word .eth. Bought that domain when when I was buying NFTs and losing money on NFTs. But pretty active on Twitter too. Yeah, feel free to hit me up anytime on either platform. And yeah, would love to hear any feedback you guys have and just kind of, get to know you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Trey.
Absolutely.